The international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are director Jonathan Sanger and author Daniel A. Miller. Jonathan Sanger was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. He earned a bachelor and a master's in communication at the University of Pennsylvania. And he has won 3 Academy Awards, 21 Academy nominations, a BAFTA and a Caesar, which are the equivalent of the Oscar in England and France. And besides that, Jonathan started his career with 3 years in the Peace Corps. What were you doing there?
Well, I was in Uruguay. I'd gone to Montevideo, Uruguay to help set up an educational television station. I went just out of graduate school, and I had an opportunity to be in a special program with a small number of volunteers in Uruguay. And we were there to bring equipment and know-how, apparently, although they actually knew a lot more than we did.
Did they?
Well, Montevideo, we found, was a very cosmopolitan, very European city, and they had 4 television stations in Uruguay at the time. So they were very well along. I mean, it was very much like the golden age of television in the States. They really knew how to do things that were quite far in the future for us, because we were just film students.
That's great, isn't it? They had a lot of Europeans going there, and they had a lot of New Yorkers going there. That was a destination holiday place.
Yeah.
And then did you go to Buenos Aires, because it's close?
I spent a fair amount of time in Buenos Aires because it was an easy trip from Montevideo to Buenos Aires, and of course, Buenos Aires for me was like New York City. I mean, it's a huge cosmopolitan city, wonderful city.
The opera,
theater. And great theaters, and so it was, it was really quite a pleasure.
Even then, which was what, 20 years ago?
No, it was more. It was the early 70s, so it's almost 40 years ago.
Yeah. And you were in Colombia too.
Yeah, well, after we set up the station in Uruguay, there wasn't really much work for us, so I asked to be transferred to Colombia, which is a completely different experience, and I went to Bogota and was there for almost 3 years.
Did you go to Medellin?
I went to Medellin, Cali, Cartagena, Barranquilla, all over. I was all over the country.
Barranquilla, fantastic. Were they having the drug problems then?
It was it was really before the big moment where there was that drug moment, which really started to happen in the late 70s into the 80s, and then I've been back since, and I actually recently made a film in Bogota, and I find it to be a very safe country now. I mean, all of the unfortunately, most of the drug problems moved to Mexico, and they're not in Colombia now.
That's how I felt. I felt very safe in Colombia. You were in the Peace Corps. Your wife, Carla, founded LA's Best, which is another humanitarian effort like you were doing. Were you both working in this field?
Well, we knew each other before I went into the Peace Corps. And originally, we were going to go into the Peace Corps together.
Oh, you were?
And then we broke up. And I went into the Peace Corps, and she went into teaching and education in Baltimore. And then at a certain point, while I was down there, when I got to Colombia, I saw the error of my ways, and I called her up and I said, "You have to come down here." She came down to Colombia, and we got married, and we stayed down there. And she founded a school in Colombia, which is still running to this day.
Oh, she founded a school, and then LA's Best is about school.
LA's Best became what happened was when we moved back to the States. We were living in New Jersey, and we had little children, so she couldn't work in the schools because she had to be home most of the time. But she wound up working in a daycare center where our kids could go, and from that she got into daycare and after-school care, and did it for the state of New Jersey, and then came out to California and founded LA's Best in the late 80s it was.
And she got a lot of awards for
Oh, yeah.
pulling that
Oh, yeah.
put the program together. We talked about the BAFTA and the Caesar. I'm going to jump all around in your career, but we talked about the BAFTA and the César, which is also an.
Sure.
But it was for Elephant Man.
That's right.
And how did you get involved in that project?
Well,
it was your first adventure.
It was my first adventure, and I mean, it is kind of a family affair, because what happened was my babysitter for my children was talking to me one day and said, "My boyfriend wrote a script, would you read it?" And I said, "Sure, I'll read it." You know, I mean, I was an assistant director at the time, and I was working with Mel Brooks. Anyway, I read this script, and it's The Elephant Man, and it is the script, you know, basically. And her boyfriend and his friend had written the script, and I thought it was fantastic. I knew nothing about the story, and I thought, this is the one. I'm going to option this. I'm going to try to see if I can do something with it. And I talked to the two writers, and I made a option to, you know, to see if I could set it up as a feature, and that was how it began. And what then happened was, by almost as you know, serendipitous fact, I was in Mel Brooks's office one day, and on a Friday he was looking for something to read, and I had this script there. So I said, "Oh, well, why don't you read this?" And he took it home, because he's a notorious insomniac. He had to have something to read. And on Monday, he called me up. He said, "Who owns this script?" And I said, "Well, I do." So he said, "Well, I want to start a new company to make movies other than my own comedies, and I'd love to do this one." So I said, "Well, okay, that sounds great." You know, I couldn't really believe it, but you know, it was so easy. I mean, I couldn't believe that.
Sometimes that happens.
But it just happened. Everything fell into place, and we sat down, and we had a lawyer draw up a contract and everything. And all of a sudden, he said, "Look, I know you, because I had been his assistant director on High Anxiety, and we'd worked together." So he said, "I trust you. I know you know how to do it." So I said, "Okay," and we then started the quest for raising the money that we had to raise to do it. But having Mel Brooks on your side makes it a little bit easier than me alone trying to figure it out. And he took us, I mean, he got us into every major studio, and we got meetings. Everyone had to want to do the material, but nevertheless, we got the entree to get in, and ultimately we were able to put it together. And he actually guaranteed completion of the film, and I went off to London to make it. And that was, you know, after I brought him David Lynch, because David Lynch.
Oh, that's where David Lynch came in.
He had not met David Lynch, and completely separately from all this, I had met David because I had seen Eraserhead, and I had a friend who knew him, and I said, "Could you introduce me to this guy?" It was no thought that he was going to direct the movie. It was just that I wanted to meet him. And when we talked, and he started, at the end of our conversation, he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing a project called Elephant Man." He said, "Oh, Elephant Man, that sounds great."
Sound like a Ricer Man.
Sounds just like what I... So I said, "Okay," we exchanged scripts. And he called me back and he said, "I love this script. I would love to have a chance to do it." And we sat down, and I didn't know any better. It wasn't like I had a group of directors in mind. So I said, "All right, well," we talked about it, and I really liked what he had to say. And so that was it.
Was that before you directed Twin Peaks?
Oh, yes.
It was
way before.
So
it was
you
before
didn't even know him.
David hadn't done anything at that point.
Oh,
In fact,
my
I don't
gosh.
even... Eraserhead was just coming out. It wasn't even a hit yet.
We knew about him because he was involved in the art community in
Right.
Venice, and he knew a lot of our artist friends.
That's right.
Well, was it easy to do Francis Farmer? With
in a
Jessica
way,
Lange?
In a way, Francis was harder in some ways, because it wasn't hard to raise the money for it, because the same company that did Elephant Man came back to us and said, "We love the experience of doing Elephant Man. What's your next movie?" So I said, "Well, I had this other project."
Oh, then that was...
And Mel said, "Yeah, let's do it all together." So we all got back, the same group of writers, and myself and Mel put it together, and EMI was our financier. And that one was not that hard.
It's a different thing.
It's never been as easy since.
It's a different thing talking to a producer, because you always come up with the money part of it. When you're talking to a director, he's already depending on you, I guess. So
Always
this is
true.
kind of different for me. The thing you also did produce was the two cruises, Tom and Penelope.
That's right.
Vanilla Sky.
Yes.
I think I'm the only one who saw it.
Oh, no. A lot of people saw it. You'd be surprised. But the thing is, a lot of it was interesting, because Alejandro Amenabar wrote the original story, which was called Abre los Ojos, which was a Spanish film, and it was based on that film. And I went to Spain to spend time with Amenabar for Tom Cruise and Paula Wagner's companies, and they had gotten the rights to this, and we set it up in
That's right.
through and the exchange was that Amenabar wound up using Nicole Kidman in The Others, and which was what he wanted, and we wound up doing
Penelope?
using Penelope in New York.
That was great. We have to go to the birthday present 2050.
Absolutely.
I've got to skip through all those
Yeah,
15 or
things.
more episodes of what you can do and what you did. So let's talk about this.
Sure.
This is written by Tanya
Wisbar.
who's from Germany,
Originally, yes.
an old friend of yours.
Well, she's somebody I've known for about more than 15 years. And I knew her basically because she had written a book about her life story. And her life story is fascinating. And I was interested in developing a movie with her on, loosely based on her life story, which we were working on. While this was happening,
I got it.
While this was happening, she said,
producer, director.
Exactly. So while this was happening, she told me she had written this play, and she let me read it. And I read the play, and I thought it was fantastic and fascinating and really, really interesting and wonderful writing. So as a result of our conversation, she said, "Well, I want you to direct it." And I said, "No, I don't think so." I said, I kind of have been producing lately. I haven't been directing anything in a while. I'm a little nervous about getting back and doing that. She said, no, you're the guy. You have to do it. You're the right person to do it. So she kind of, at a certain point, she's very convincing. She got to the point where I said, okay, I'll try. I'll give it a shot.
And where is the theater?
The theater is the Skylight Theater.
Oh, Skylight.
It's
on Vermont.
on Vermont, and
it's a great theater.
I love the theater. We looked at theaters. We looked at a lot of different theaters when we were developing it, and I just thought that was a terrific space.
How did you cast it? Because you got fantastic.
Well,
did you know those people?
I didn't know any of the people, in fact, but we had a great casting director, Shaman Bernard, and she brought in terrific people, and we just everyone wanted to read for it. It was really good, and I am used to casting. I've been in that world my whole career. And we were able to get a really stellar cast.
So who do you have?
Great group.
Let's talk about.
Well, we have Salome Jens, who was really the lead. Salome came in, and initially it was just a meeting. She doesn't come in and read for everybody, but she wanted to read. She wanted to read. She actually wanted to come in and read for it. Alyssa Davalos, who plays her daughter, who's wonderful, wonderful actress. Another young actress who plays another daughter is Katrina Lenk. I mean, they're all really, really wonderful.
Court.
Bud Court came in and has been doing a part that only appears on a video screen.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. I mean, he's there, but he's kind of the big brother of the story in the sense.
Before we leave, give us this story, because it's so bizarre.
Well, it's a story about. The thing is, it's a story about the near future, It's not the far future.
Right.
We're talking 2050 is only,
It's
only 30, 40 years from now. It's not a long time. And so we recognize the human impulses. And it all takes place at a birthday party for the eldest member of the family, the mother, who is played by Salome Jens. And in this society, there's no more there's no more war. Everything has been solved.
Right.
You think. Everything is good. But the exchange is that anything that doesn't have a purpose doesn't exist. So that there are no flowers that are grown just for beauty. Unless there's a real purpose.
Oh, a purpose. I got it.
They don't. No pets. No. This is.
That's why I think it's so bizarre. It's very interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see it actually on the stage. Could it go to Broadway or? It could.
It definitely could have a life beyond the Skylight. In fact, I hope it does, and I think we are planning to see that it does. I think it also is. It could very well play in a lot of nonprofits around the country, because it's a very interesting. The premise is so interesting and prescient in a way. It's a really, really unusual play with political overtones, but it's not a political story. It's a family story. It's a story about a family making a decision about keeping an elder alive.
Yes, it's so current. You're talking about 2050, but it's so
it is very
today.
current, yeah.
Thank you
Joan.
very much.
Joan.
And thanks for watching. Don't go away. We'll be right back with author Danny Miller. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with Daniel A. Miller, who was born and raised in the San Bernardino area, went to business school at UCLA, and continued his education at UCLA's law school. Danny practiced law and was an astute businessman, a husband, and a father. Then there was a turning point in his life that changed everything. He wrote about it in Losing Control, Finding Sincerity. What made you realize that control was a big problem?
What made me realize was a culmination of a series of really traumatic events. It ended with the final wake-up call, but this wake-up call was by a doctor. I was in his room, and I was sort of like in a dream state. It was very light and very chilly, and there were people around me, and as I was awakening, his name was Dr. Kiryanov, said, Danny, I need your consent before I go further. I said, what do you mean, doctor? I'd only went to the hospital for a simple 20-minute procedure for skin cancer on my right nostril.
Oh, you actually did. You were actually in the hospital.
I really was.
And
So
you woke up like this?
That was my wake-up call, because I had been under for 5 hours, and they needed to remove my entire right side of the nose.
Oh, is that right?
And that's because I'm such a compulsive controller. I was so wrapped up in things that I missed doctor's appointments. So had I gone, I wouldn't have had this whole thing happen. I ended up having 5 or 6 surgeries, and that was really the culmination of a series of things that brought me to the point where I realized that I just didn't have the strength or the energy or the desire to keep going forward like I had been. And so basically I surrendered, Joan.
What age were you then?
This was my early 40s. This was
Is
my
that
early 40s.
right? That soon? You had been so stressed and so in control up to through your 40s.
I had a business. I gave seminars. I wrote
You did.
a book.
You wrote a book, Investing in Real Estate, and you started a class. And wasn't that enough for you?
Well, that's a really good question.
Wasn't that enough?
The answer is no. Not for we controllers. In other words, we're ingrained with this drive, this discipline, wanting to really succeed, and we set goals. And what happens, like in my case, I was successful at an early age.
Right.
I really was.
When you got out of UCLA, that's when you were investing and practicing.
I was investing. I had celebrities entrusting money to me to invest. Right. But I didn't feel successful inside. Internally, in the core, I wasn't content.
But why do people want to control? I mean,
the short answer is because they think they need to. They think they need to, because we are raised, from the time we're young children in a control-driven society. Our parents, who could be more controlling than our parents, right?
Yeah, well, because they want you to be...
Of course, it could be good, but it's still like, as a kid, is like my life's being dictated to me. At school, similar things, even in church, politics, everything. So that's all we know. So we think it works. We think it works. And it's very deeply ingrained, and it's hard to break that pattern.
But people always control in different degrees.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
And you seem like a control freak compared to what? A person who just wants to control to make sure that things are running on time? I mean, who aren't possessed with something like that?
Yeah, definitely there's a distinction. And what my book is really aimed at, and what I'm talking about, is what I call excessive control or domineering. And that's the type of control that's driven by our fears and our anxieties and our strong emotions. That type of control is not healthy for us or the people that we deal with.
But can you ever let go of that?
Sure. Read my book.
Losing control and finding. And that's how you have to let go of it, right?
I don't mean to be light of that. It's a very difficult process in letting go. And it starts with becoming aware that you're a controller. I don't think people realize how much they do control. I mean, we all control, and it's important. I mean, control is necessary in our lives today. It's a very complex society.
But when people let go of their control, like especially men, I mean, maybe mothers too, but you feel like you're losing something. You're losing your quality to be a good person. You're losing different things about yourself because you've been able to control things.
That's true. Because
You lose your self-esteem in a
No,
way.
no, not really. Not really. It's extremely uncomfortable
It
at
is.
first. It's extremely uncomfortable, and that's why I recommend to people and tell people, do it a little at a time.
Oh, that's a good
Let go
idea.
a little at a time. You know, you don't want to let the whole dam break and the water gushing out. You know, so do a little at a time, and you see what happens. Now, for me, it started at work because after my surgeries, when I went back to work. You know, I was out for a couple months, and you know, everything was going pretty well. So
Without you.
Without me, without me. So even a controller, I had to take stock on that.
But that's really kind of depressing to a control person too, right? Things are going okay without me. You know, like, what am I going to do?
Not for me. It felt really good.
It did?
It felt
so
good
people
because
look at
it takes all this pressure. You know, we think we're so powerful and that we can control so much, and the reality is that we can't. And that we can't.
But we don't want to lose control over our kids because we don't want to lose them, and we don't want them doing the wrong thing, and we don't want to.
No!
So they need boundaries. They need boundaries.
Okay. This is a really important point you're raising, and let me address it. Okay. In fact, I've even written about it on my blog. Is what I find is the fundamental parental challenge.
Yes.
Is to fulfill our responsibility as parents to instill good moral values, ethics, manners,
Right.
encourage
We
education.
try.
Right. We all try, but to do that without going over to where we're over managing our children's lives. Because once we start over managing their lives, we're actually hurting them. We're not allowing them to have life's experience, the hard knocks, things that they can learn from going forward.
I know, but we're always so afraid to let them do those hard knocks because
Yes.
we can see it.
Yes, and so that's why I write extensively about, boy, you're just great, you're asking me all these questions, is fear. Fear.
Oh, fear,
And
right.
what could be more fearful than what parental fear?
Exactly.
It's so strong. So we need to address those fears. We need to find ways to process those fears. And what you find, and what I found, is the reality, the objective facts over here, and we have our emotions here. And we need to separate the two because these emotions script these terrible horror stories, especially
Right.
regarding our children.
Right.
So if we can separate those and process those, it really brings a better balance, and we can see, okay, so she got a C on her test.
Right.
Is the world coming to the end?
Right.
Does that mean she's not going to get in the college of her choice? Does that mean she's not going to be happy in life?
Those are all the things we try to think about, right?
I know.
And try to control.
That's true.
But it doesn't. You're right about that. If she goes to a different college, so what? It's like we want her to go to a certain college because it reflects on us.
Yep.
A lot of that
That's
happens.
really true, and that's the other thing is our parental egos and
Yeah.
sense of social standing
Right. All of
drives
that.
us to push them harder and further when maybe that's not the best thing for them.
Yeah, I think that has a
Yeah.
lot to do with it. This is the subtitle, How the Need to Control Hurts Us and How to Let It Go. So how does it hurt us?
It hurts us. I like to use the example of, or the metaphor, if you look at life as constantly moving and shifting and ebbing and flowing, is when we're trying to control too much, we're trying to hold on to something that's
Yeah.
moving. It's like a conveyor belt. If you grab onto a fast-moving conveyor belt, you're going to get burned or you're going to be dragged along.
Right.
And same with control. It's like the intensity of what I call the excessive control actions puts blinders on us.
Mm-hmm.
We can't see the opportunities are there.
So it's hurting us in that respect.
It's hurting us in that. But it's all the what ifs, what could be's, what might happen. So all the worry and anxiety is part of control-driven behavior.
Yeah, well, if you give up your control, you have this kind of laissez-faire attitude, and we're all built for competition. And so how do you address that?
I address it that I'm working half the number of hours and I'm making more money than I did before by letting go of control at work.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And what I
even
mean by
though
it's not laissez-faire. It's not laissez-faire. It's a matter of waiting for circumstances to evolve to the point where then you can assert yourself in a manner that's with the flow of what's going on.
And I'm going like, no, you can't do that. You've got to hurry to make sure that thing happens, because if we're not there when it happens, it's not going to work. And you're saying lay back and wait
It
for
may
it.
work better. How about that? It may work,
That's
it
what
probably
you're-
will work differently.
Yeah, that's
So,
what
in
you're
other words,
saying.
it's not a single outcome. There's different ways of defining success at work or anything.
And I don't even think I'm a control person. And
No, I can
like this.
tell.
I might need 4 of these books to read. Carry one in the car.
And you can give it to the controllers in your life.
That's right. Well, how and do we really address this situation?
One is I call decontrol cues. You know, during the day when all of a sudden you feel like you're in an impasse or conflict, let go, Danny. Release it. Surrender to it.
And like what kind of situation?
It could be a business, an argument with your child or a mate. It could be whatever the situation. When you feel dis-ease, try to step back and say, let it go. Take a break. Go on to something else. That's a real simple one. Another one that's probably more significant is what I call moderate our expectations. We tend to expect too much from people and things. And when you do, you're compelled to try to force those results by control action. So be realistic on your expectations.
Because we expect someone to do what we could do.
Or
See,
we
that's
wa-
a problem.
Or what we want them to do.
Or what we want them to do.
Or what we feel they should do.
Expect them to do.
Or what might be better for them.
That's right. You've got all the things
Those
that
are all
I'm
the
talking
things.
about.
But the bottom line, and I've learned this, and this is a theme of the book throughout, is we cannot in any meaningful way really change or control others. We really can't. And what happens is the more we try, there's resentment.
All right.
You like being told what to do?
No, you start
You
resenting
don't only
it.
tell me how to do this interview.
No.
You wouldn't like that. No. And that's the same
Or
thing
where
with
to
people.
sit or what to do.
Yeah. So, but what happens, the other part of that is once you can accept that, then you can focus on yourself. And
But
that's
let's talk about that for
Sure.
a minute, though. You're saying that, but what if I say, oh, he came in and he's controlling me, and he wants to sit in my seat? Okay, let him go ahead and sit in my seat. Is that what I should have done? You didn't want to sit in my seat, though.
No, I don't want to sit in your seat. Too
But I mean,
responsible.
is that where you start letting go, those kind of things?
Well, that's what you're really talking about. Is, which is a good one too. A good question is how do you deal with controllers or people that are controllers?
yeah.
Okay, so it's important to be calm. You're going to have
Oh,
a hard
be calm.
time. You're going to be having a real hard time resisting a controller. Okay, so what you have to do is sort of play it smart a little bit. Let them have a say, do it, and then calmly say. Danny, you're sitting in my seat. Do you mind if I sit there?
Oh,
Is that
okay.
okay with you?
Yeah.
But not like, Danny, you're in my seat. Get out of here. So
Right.
that's the whole area. But it's important to express your feelings and your needs at the same time. It's a matter of how you do that.
Is there a spiritual component in this book and in this thing that you're talking about?
Yeah, I feel there is. It's not. It's
I don't know if it's written in there. I couldn't find it, but I feel that
well,
there's
it's
some
interesting.
kind of...
There's a trade magazine called the New Age Retailer that sells to mind, body, and spirit stores. They gave me a very nice review that's coming out in May.
Oh, maybe that's how I'm feeling.
They're marketing it to that type of market, and so there is an element, and the element is when we let go of control, it frees life's natural currents. Okay, and it's those currents that if we can sort of engage those in a non-resisting manner, it can take us many nice places. I became an artist at 45.
I
I could never draw as a kid, and within a year I was painting some really nice paintings, and I didn't know where this came from.
I think that's fantastic, and
yeah.
if we go away with that today, I think we really have something that we've learned.
Well, thank you, Joan.
And thanks for watching. Keep writing to JAQUINN1@AOL.com and 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. See you next time.
Bye.